Well guys, the time has come. I've officially updated my website. As you can see, it looks a lot more simple, and I've also added some new shirts. As you can see, they're epic. They're also on sale. The Liberal Tears mugs and everything, the original is still on there, and I actually have something very special to show you guys. I have one in real life. So here it is. This is what it looks like. As you can see, it's printed extremely high quality, and what I didn't know is that I actually have it on both sides. So if you're right-handed or left-handed, you'll be able to see a Liberal Tears mug from either side. And don't forget, you can also order it without the smiley face if you don't like that. But it's actually the most popular one, which is pretty funny. So here you go. Here it is. Check out the new website. You can read the description if you want. Check it out. Thank you guys. Let's get into the video. See you later.
A tremendous, and especially now with Trevor Noah, sympathy for the Palestinians. And now the Palestinian issue is coming around, that Israel will be seen again as a pariah. And here in California, you were just talking about the strong left presence here. What would you say to the public who assumes that if someone's Jewish, they're going to support Israel prima facie?
I would say that if you're ethnically Jewish, that's an indicator that you probably don't support Israel. The fact is, speaking in terms of polls, the vast majority of the Jewish community has no interest in Jewish religion or in the Jewish state. And so treating people who are born Jewish as though they have any more authority than anybody else to speak about the state of Israel is idiotic. I mean, it's like polling people who are born Catholic on matters about Catholicism. The question isn't, were you born Catholic? The question is, are you a practicing Catholic? So, for those of us who actually care about the practice of Judaism and who actually care about Israel, those of us, we tend to be conservative. Everybody who's non-practicing, they go to synagogue once a year on Yom Kippur and break for lunch. I mean, why would you expect them to care about Israel or Judaism?
What do you think about it?
The Jewish Federation tends to be left because most of the people at the top of the Jewish Federation tend to be Reform and conservative Jews. Again, the correlation is not causation, but it is pretty clear that, speaking of correlation, Orthodox Jews vote heavily Republican. Conservative and Reform Jews, who have significantly less of an identity with authentic Torah Judaism, but have plenty of identity with bagels and matzah balls and claims of victimhood, they tend to occupy a lot of the Jewish federations around the country.
So, if the media is leftist dominant, how are Jewish people, especially young Jewish people, to get a good sense of what's happening and how they should view things?
Well, I mean, this is one of the things that I like about the fact the media is fragmenting, is you can have so many sources of information, places like your source. There are many sources that you can look, but it's up to parents, particularly when talking about young Jewish people, to start introducing their kids to various other sources of information other than the traditional sources the kids will get when they go to school or when they turn on Trevor Noah, who, by the way, is a hack, or when they turn on any of the other various mainstream news networks, with the possible exception of Fox.
Would you characterize Jon Stewart, who people think of as a great Jew in media, as in fact a great Jew?
Based on what would I call him a great Jew? I mean, really, I can't think of a single standard by which I would call John Leibowitz a great Jew.
What would you consider him as having done?
Who is prominent. He's an ethnic Jew who is prominent. That's not the same thing. Noam Chomsky is also an ethnic Jew who's prominent. I wouldn't call him a great Jew either.
Do you feel the Daily Show is being used as a political advocacy?
I mean, of course, that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's an advocacy show, absolutely. And unfortunately for them, Trevor Noah is not nearly as talented at being a political hack as Jon Stewart was, and he's really a step down. You take away for Stewart or Trevor Noah, you take away the audience and the show dies. Syria. Obviously, they are horrifying. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. There are all these pictures of dead children who have been gassed to death by the Bashar Assad regime. And that comes just a few days after the Trump administration came out and said Assad would remain in power. I'd said that's not a coincidence. If it had happened under Obama, I would have said the exact same thing. I have a very simple standard when it comes to what I expect from my politicians, and that is, your word matters and what you say has credibility. And it turns out that in foreign policy particularly, it matters when you say things. So the fact that Trump's people said Assad will stay in power and then 3 days later he's gassing children, I don't think that's any sort of major coincidence. A survivor of a 2013 Syria chemical attack, he was on CNN and he was talking about what he thinks Trump should do.
If I may just say a few words directly to President Trump, if you'll just give me the chance. Please.
Mr. President, please, in the name of every woman and child and elder who got killed by the Assad regime, please come in and help us. Don't make the same mistakes that President Obama did. You criticized Obama for failing to punish and act when Assad crossed the red lines. Now is the moment of truth. Now you should show the world that those days are over. We can't just keep living in this unprecedented crimes against humanity. We just can't keep living like this. I would personally love to come to the United States and meet you and tell you my personal story.
You know, obviously the media is happy to put this sort of stuff on TV because they're saying, you know, Trump should do something. There are two questions here. One, whose fault is all of this? And two, what should President Trump do right now? Those are the two big questions. It's pretty clear that this is Obama's fault. It's pretty clear that this started under Obama, that it was Obama who was saying for years and years and years that we had disarmed the Assad regime. He proclaimed himself a massive political genius for having drawn a red line, then backed away from the red line after Bashar Assad used chemical weapons against his own people. And then he said that he had disarmed Assad and left Assad in power while Assad continued to gas folks. John McCain correctly says this is Obama's legacy.
He is obviously, as we all are, appalled. Could I make 2 points? One, this is a legacy of Barack Obama. The last time this happened, Barack Obama said they'd crossed a red line, called me and Lindsey Graham down to the White House, said we're going to, and did nothing. You know, one thing worse than doing nothing is saying you're going to do something as the most powerful leader on earth and doing nothing. So this is a legacy of Barack Obama, and it's been going on now for the intervening 4 years. So what we need to do, we need to stop Bashar Assad's planes from flying, and we can do that easily.
You have been bringing this issue up to the forefront. I know it's been a great frustration for you. I got to go, but just very quickly, are safe zones viable?
I mention again, Barack Obama had an opportunity to stop this and would have long ago, and he took a hike, and that's a terrible legacy.
Okay, and McCain is exactly right. And listen, McCain is no friend of Trump, so when he says this is on Obama, you can trust that Senator McCain is exactly right on this. This certainly is on Obama. So the question really is what's going to happen in Syria now with the Trump administration, because this is a fly-by-night, seat-of-the-pants operation with regard to foreign policy. Basically, you have Nikki Haley, who's a traditional conservative. You have H.R. McMaster, who's a more realist conservative. And then you have Trump, who's a who knows. Right? Nobody knows where he is, and nobody, like, when people say that Trump was ripping Obama over his Syria policy years ago, he was actually ripping Obama for even getting involved in Syria years ago, saying we never should have drawn a red line, we never should have been involved. So presumably he wouldn't have stopped what was going on in Syria either from Obama. So the application of the criticism that McCain is making to Obama, it still actually applies to Trump as well. So yesterday, Trump saw all these images, and this is sort of the danger of Trump. Because Trump doesn't have a coherent worldview, he tends to be very reactionary on his foreign policy. So does he have a strategy on Syria? Not really, because he doesn't have a strategy on Iran. And this is the thing no one wants to talk about. Iran is the sponsor state for Syria. It is also a client state. Syria is a client state of Russia. Trump has been very warm to Russia, but very cold to Iran. So now he's in this weirdly conflicted situation where he doesn't really want to be involved, but the two main forces that are supporting the Syrian regime are enemies of the United States, but one of those regimes he's actually friendly with. So it's this bizarre, nonsensical foreign policy. And so what ends up happening is that he doesn't have any policy, and then something bad happens, like you see a bunch of dead kids on TV, and suddenly everybody is clamoring for U.S. involvement, and Trump reacts exactly how you think somebody who's a neophyte would react. Instead of saying, I have a coherent policy, he basically says, this affected me deeply, and I will do something.
The world is a mess. I inherited a mess. Whether it's the Middle East, whether it's North Korea, whether it's so many other things, whether it's in our country, horrible trade deals, I inherited a mess. We're going to fix it.
Okay, and he doesn't say how he's going to fix it. He is correct, of course, that this is a mess. But he's the president now, and it didn't cut a lot of weight with me when Obama would say, I inherited a mess from Bush. Every president says they inherited a mess from their predecessor. Usually they're right. That doesn't mean that they're not president. So what is Trump actually going to do about this? Trump then embraces the language that Obama used and jumps right onto the landmine that Obama jumped onto and that he told Obama not to jump onto years ago.
Just quickly ask you if the chemical attack crosses a red line for you.
It crossed the lines for me. When you kill innocent children, innocent babies, little babies, with a chemical gas that is so lethal. People were shocked to hear what gas it was. That crosses many, many lines, beyond the red line, many, many lines. Thank you very much.
And then the follow-up was, so what are you going to do? And he said, I'll tell you about it later. And it's like, well, okay, I guess, but there better be a later. Nikki Haley, who actually has thought about some of these things a little more, she basically threatened action. I don't know that Trump approved this because she's been saying things for a while that Trump says the opposite of. But here's Nikki Haley over at the UN talking about Syria.
When the United Nations consistently fails in its duty to act collectively, there are times in the life of states that we are compelled to take our own action.
And the action that she's threatening is unclear. So here's what they should do. What they should do is they should establish a no-fly zone. We had a no-fly zone over Iraq for a decade. It helped prevent more gassing of the Kurds, like we saw in the aftermath of the Gulf War. And we should establish a no-fly zone. That means putting American jets in the air over Syria, along with our allies, to prevent the Russians and the Iranians and the Syrians from taking up the airspace and gassing people. That would be the ideal. You set that up, and then you have to set up refugee camps or help fund refugee camps, which we are already doing, by the way, and which Trump actually favors. Now, one of the stupider things that I saw was somebody saying, you can't complain about the images of the dead Syrian kids if you don't want to let in refugees, if you believe in Trump's travel ban. This is asinine. Okay, there are lots of other solutions other than letting everybody in who's unvetted to this particular problem. One of the points of setting up a no-fly zone is to prevent people from having to flee the country. One of the points of having a refugee system over there is to prevent people from having to flee to the West. This is, people have compared this to sort of the treatment, the world's treatment of the Jews during the Holocaust. That is absolutely inaccurate. The world shut its borders to Jews all over the world. That is not the same thing as what's happening in Syria right now. There are 58, more than that, I think, Muslim countries around the world who are fully capable of taking in Muslim citizens of Syria. The idea that the first option should be for them to go to Europe or to the United States is just silly. One of the reasons Israel was established, not the only reason, obviously, but one of the reasons Israel was established is because there was no Jewish country to actually absorb refugees in times of crisis like World War II. And now there is, and that's a good thing. And the same thing holds true for Muslim refugees in the Middle East. That's a really poor argument. Is there something Trump could do short of war? Yes. He's going to have to get harsher with the Russians. He's going to have to tell the Russians to back down, that this no-fly zone will be imposed, and that we're going to work together to destroy ISIS. Is he willing to do that? We're going to find out. We're going to find out. But, this is the sort of thing where there's an easier solution than normal, but it does demonstrate how reactive Trump is. And this is what worries me about his personality. Not the kind of silliness of Twitter. It is silly, and he has wasted months on tweeting silly things and then covering up for the silly tweets. But on foreign policy, the way presidents get themselves in trouble is they stick their toe in the water, an alligator bites it, and then they get into a war. That's basically what happens, is that, Trump says something like Assad can stay, Assad gasses a bunch of kids. We set up a no-fly zone in response to that. An American jet gets shot down by the Syrians, and now we're at war with the Assad regime, right? I mean, you could see something like that happening very easily, and the original solution would have been to set up a no-fly zone without actually telling Assad that it was okay to gas children, and then presumably he wouldn't have gassed children in an attempt to regain credibility. But that's not what happened. This is why words matter in foreign policy, and as much as people say we should take Trump seriously but not literally, the fact is on foreign policy, you're
Hello everyone! Hey, I'm just stopping by to remind you that liberals are insane! Social justice warriors are becoming more violent and triggered than ever before. Anyways, be sure to subscribe to KGP TV on YouTube and have a blessed day. Yeah, man!